What is going on? It is Dr. Remy LeBeau, and I'm coming at you once again from the X Lair to provide you my very deep and insightful thoughts into the latest episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We just had Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode 5 of 6 drop tonight, and this was a very powerful episode. It's interesting the way the show is sort of evolving. I didn't do a review last week, but clearly last week was very climactic, and it almost felt like a third act, but clearly it was not. Clearly it was not. Like, we are going to get a third act, and that is like sort of this episode leading into the next one, and then obviously that's when we'll get like the big expensive showdown of some sort, right? It's just going to be a major showdown, and we're going to get the introduction of Sam Wilson as Captain America. I know that whatever's in that Dora Milaje case that Bucky gave him is the Captain America, the Falcon Captain America suit, from the comics. So that's a very exciting prospect to know that that is basically gonna happen next episode. That's very fucking cool. I thought it was gonna be a lot more complicated to sort of get us to Bucky. Get us to Sam as Captain America. I'm glad that we were there, basically. That's very good. And I love that the show is really, really dealing with it head on, the issue of well, here's this black man taking over the mantle of Captain America. That's very different than Steve Rogers with blonde hair, blue eyes, and it's very much directly engaging into that conversation, and I fucking have a lot of respect for it. And this episode was such a great moment to sort of breathe, and we've had big moments, we've had big spectacle, we've had big movements, we've had a lot of the big players introduced, and now this episode allowed us to kind of reflect a bit. It allowed us to spend a little bit of time with the characters. It kind of reminds me of I remember there's I guess always if you ever watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, every second to last episode was always very much about just kind of reflecting and letting the characters sort of breathe before the storm. Kind of like that moment when Gandalf and is it Pippin or Merry, one of the two, are in the Citadel, in the third Lord of the Rings, and they know the war is coming, they can see it coming, and you're just kind of just waiting for it. But you have a moment to kind of reflect and have a really lovely philosophical moment. And that's sort of what this episode was. It was kind of that moment to breathe and sort of philosophically examine some of the themes and ideas that the show is trying to sort of explore in this sort of process of turning Sam Wilson into the next Captain America. Clearly the show is about getting us to the next Captain America, and you've got all these contenders, and just a lot of complications, and the idea of being super, and what does it mean to make ethical decisions with that. If you're trying to do good, what is the line where you're no longer doing good if you're willing to accept a lot of loss, in order to accomplish, a greater amount of good. It's very much asking a lot of questions that really kind of reverberate from Thanos. I was thinking about that right when this episode was starting. Thanos is responsible for all of this. And Thanos is going to be responsible for everything moving forward, all the complications, because everything has come from that, Scarlet Witch, obviously, she was dead for 5 years, and it was Thanos that killed Vision, and that's obviously going to lead, that led to WandaVision, and then that's going to lead to whatever else comes next in the multiverse of madness. I mean, it's all fucking Thanos. It always comes back to Thanos, which is really, really fucking cool if you think about it, and it's really great foundational fodder for this cinematic universe, of which Kevin Feige is the only one that's managed to pull off a successful one, and it's soaring, it's fucking fantastic, and clearly, they're very much just kind of digging into the world of the MCU and just kind of letting the circumstances dictate where the story goes, and that's very much what Marvel was always doing, and really what most serialized sort of storytellers have always done. They didn't break the mold. Marvel didn't break the mold in terms of overall storytelling, but they did break the mold with respect to, just a very particular type of superhero story that ultimately is very grounded, you know, and that's what this show is doing. You know, it's like kind of bringing a lot of what the MCU is about down to earth, because obviously we had this fucking monumental like Earth universe, like in the balance, like story of the Infinity War and everything that went along with that. And now I like that it's very much kind of like bringing things to like, oh well, let's go back to ground level, you know, let's get back to into these characters' lives and like kind of see who they are now versus who they were then, and how things have changed with them, and how the dynamic of themselves within this changing world, while also changing, will lead to, you know, who knows what, you know. But like it's very much like about kind of savoring things, like, you know, you would if you were, I don't know, I'm not a wine drinker, but if you were to savor some fine wine, it's sort of that ilk, where you just kind of really want to take a moment to like, well, let's just like really kind of soak up this world, you know, in a very real way, all the while, you know, giving you all the Marvel, you know, all the bells and whistles, you know, because that stuff is obviously what ultimately sells the whole thing. And I really enjoyed all last episode, the Dora Milaje showing up, their battle, like trying to get Zemo, fucking awesome. The whole thing with Battlestar and him ultimately dying, and that kind of causing John Walker to go over the edge, and like, you know, him being captured globally with like blood on the Captain America shield, like very powerful stuff. And you know what? I was thinking this episode, like, I mean, clearly the resolution to that was very abrupt, but obviously we're not done with that, because if you saw the after credit scene, like we saw that John Walker is making a Party City version of the Captain America shield. But, you know, like clearly we're not done with him. And like who, you know, nobody would have assumed that would have been the case, because he took the super soldier serum. So, I mean, clearly like he's still a player, and now he's going to be, you know, a very particular type of player, sort of like the dark Captain America, as it were. But nonetheless, like we saw that, and then, you know, we got to the Isaiah stuff as well in this episode. So then a lot of really serious stuff. And then there was a very important sort of intentful attempt to kind of lighten things up, right? You had the Julia Louis-Dreyfus cameo, which was, even though intriguing, somewhat off kilter for the overall tone of the show, but a really good moment to sort of kind of, you know, take the needle back to like kind of whimsical, you know, like kind of break that serious streak. And then, you know, you had the whole sequence with the boat, and then obviously Sam's sister and Bucky kind of, you know, flirting with each other, fun moments between Bucky and Sam, and there was like a very, very clear intentful sort of trajectory of like, let's lighten things up because we're telling a serious story with a lot of serious elements, but we don't want people to just feel like dour and fucking sad walking away from this shit. But they do want people to be like reflecting like on things in an important way, right? Because that's Marvel has always been very adult, very like, let's tell superhero stories, but let's like also examine some like really important sort of thematic ideas that ultimately reflect like the most important like philosophical questions that humanity deals with, right? So it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, and it's all Kevin Feige, and I love it. Anyway, so yeah, all the Dora Milaje stuff, fucking great. The Io and Bucky shit, I love that shit so fucking much. It's so wonderful. I love that Io is getting her like her moment, you know, and hopefully this leads to more. Maybe a Dora Milaje movie would be very cool, you know, with her and Denai Guerrera, and you know, maybe, I don't know, some other Dora Milaje, and like, I don't know, go into maybe the lore of the Dora Milaje, their origins, shit, things of that sort, you know, Rogue Dora Milaje, I don't know, all sorts of really cool ideas. I mean, maybe there was a Dora Milaje at one point that maybe took that herb, you know, secretly, and like they took the power, you know. Maybe there's a story there, you know, like, I don't know, but there's like so much cool shit that they can do. And it was really cool. I'm so happy they brought her in. I'm so happy we saw Wakanda. I love the idea that she helped Bucky get over his bullshit, his programming, and that they share this special bond. I loved the stuff with her, and I loved all the stuff with Baron Zemo. He's so great in this show, and he's such a great character. He's like this really subtle, creepy person, and it's like it works really well. Like he's not necessarily threatening, but like he always puts you off ease, right? Like you're not you expect something bad to happen, but there's also like a sensible sort of side to what he's doing. I don't know, but like that moment where like, what's her name? Carly was like escaping, and then he finds her, and then shoots her, and then that's when like the super soldier serum like gets sort of revealed in the last episode. That was brutal, but it was very much like what you expect him to be. So he's a very consistent character. I really like him. I really like that character a lot, and I like that they're giving him the look. I love that fucking coat, and like that sort of like purple, dark purple undersuit. Fucking dope, man. He looks great. He looks fucking great. And when he put on that that mask, he looked fucking fantastic as well. So yeah, I loved all of that stuff. The super soldier serum. I really thought Zemo would have taken it, but clearly he's against like supremacy. He's against people that are just ultimate power seekers or embodiers, right? Like he wants to bring people back down to earth because that's what took his family, right? People that have elevated themselves, whether willingly or not, to this other level of humanity, right? That sort of is supreme over, you know, the normal people. And so he didn't take it, but John Walker, he had sort of a philosophical moment where he didn't know if he was going to take it, and then he asked the dude Battlestar, and the guy was like, "Yeah, I would do it," and like, "You're a good guy," and like, "But whatever," and this enhances who you are. But ultimately, it revealed that he's not the greatest guy. You know, he's got some issues in his head, and like clearly this exacerbated it. But seeing his friend die was obviously a thing that sort of sparked him. But nonetheless, there is obviously an edge to that guy, and it's not good. And I was very surprised when I found out that he took it, and then yeah, it was very shocking what happened to Battlestar, and then what happened to him. Now, I heard some people criticize online over the course of the last week that was a cliche thing to do, and sort of a problematic to kill like the black friend that was sort of the mechanism for the white guy to sort of, you know, have his sort of character arc move forward. And what I have to say to that is a valid criticism, and has always been a valid criticism, because if you go back in a time in history and like in the representation of African American black people in film, in television, or even just thinking of people of color represented in different roles, they have often been sort of relegated to sort of this like plot device to move the story forward. You know, okay, so here's the black person that, you know, is like gives the sage advice that helps the white person do what they need to do or whatever. And that's always been problematic. The thing about what we're seeing here, though, is that this has addressed the criticism, because the criticism was always that black people are this, or Asian folks or Latin folks or whomever are this very particular sort of thing in the movie and nothing else. And the idea was that you didn't have balance. Like you didn't have like other black folks that are like just of different sorts, just like ultimately like in the real world, where it's like you don't just have a black person doing this very specific thing. It's like there are all sorts of people doing all sorts of shit. And so clearly in the show, like you have all sorts of people of all sorts of races, all intermingling. It's not a thing. And so the fact that one character happened to be black, who then happened to be the one that dies, who never really got a deep backstory, but then again, who cares? We're getting fucking Sam Wilson's deep backstory. I'm looking for his deep backstory. I'm looking for Bucky's backstory. I'm looking for Josea's backstory. You know, I'm looking for a lot of other backstories. Like, I don't need everyone's backstory. Like, a person like that can simply just be sort of the device to get John to the next level, which will then help Sam get to the next level, right? Like, because the show is about Sam, you know? And that's the thing. It's like, it's not just about some like white guy and there's like some black folks or some brown folks or some Asian folks or some whomever folks that are just sort of there to kind of help the white person get along. That's not what this show is. And that's not what the MCU is. And so that's what I have to say about that criticism. But it's always been a valid criticism. I just don't feel it's a valid criticism for this show. And so therefore I ignore it. This is the problem with modern sort of critical theory being applied to things. It's like people learn about critical theory from sort of like Twitter and like the media and people that don't really understand it on the academic level, which is where it started from. And then they just start applying it to everything, and then everything seems problematic, but that's not how it is. Like a lot of these criticisms were born from a time when things were very intentionally meant to be one way. Exclude most people but white people in the representation of television and movies. And then, you know, that obviously led to a backlash and then criticism, and that's been formalized and now is being applied on a mass scale and it's become popularized. But people have taken it irresponsibly and applied it to everything they possibly can, not necessarily, you know, going down all the layers. And that's ultimately why, you know, when you talk about this sort of backlash against wokeness or whatever, that's not a backlash against wokeness. It's a backlash against people that don't really understand what it means to be woke. They're just like recklessly pretending to be woke and then ultimately giving woke people a bad name because they are not actually applying things in a way that's sensible. They're just sort of just like this wild weapon that hasn't been trained, right? It's not. So anyway, but this is a whole other issue. But it got me thinking last week about that, because like you can't just criticize everything. Like this show is very clearly not a show that you can criticize on the level of, well, I mean, you can always criticize whatever you want, but just like objectively, like, is there something wrong with the representation of race in this show? And in my opinion, absolutely fucking not. It is very clearly leaning into the fact that it is about race. Like you have this man who's going to take on the mantle of Captain America, but he's black. What does it mean for a black man to take up the mantle of Captain America? Well, this country has not been good to black people ever, like ever. And so therefore black folks would they want to take on the shield. And obviously Josiah is like sort of the voice of that perspective, right? Like, do I want to represent this country? Like, you know, I saw people representing this country. I saw the Red Tails representing this country, and they got home and they had crosses burned on their lawns, you know? I tried to, and by the way, like, I did not know Josiah's like backstory. Is it Josiah or Isaiah? I think it's Isaiah. I don't know. I never read the comics, so this is all new to me. I'm like processing it. But Isaiah, like, his backstory is a parallel to Steve's backstory. Like, he gets the Captain America serum, right? But it's like a very dark mirror of it, right? Like, he gets it under horrible circumstances. He's told it's one thing, he's being experimented on, it's fucked up. He gets the fucking serum, and then at one point, like, and then they're using him as a weapon. And then at one point, he realizes that a lot of his buddies are POWs, they're gonna get killed, so he goes in to save them. That's exactly what fucking Steve did. But then instead of fucking giving him honors and shit, they fucking lock him up. And then he's in love with this woman, but he's gone for 30 years and he loses her. Just like fucking Steve was in love with Peggy, and then he's gone and he loses her. It was like the same it was like the same story. It's just such a great like way of telling that story of like, just like, let me very clearly for you parallel the experience of a black man versus a white man in even the Marvel universe, you know, and in even the MCU. Like, let me really zero in on this and let me show you the difference between how Captain America is treated when he's black versus Captain America is treated when he's white. You know, it's like very much leaning into that, and this is not a blunt tool. This is a very sharp tool, and I respect that so much, and I think it's so powerful. You know, I think it's so powerful, especially now. You know, with like, you know, the poor dude that was recently killed by the police, that poor kid that was killed. George Floyd's trials going on right now. Like, there's all sorts of stuff going on, and it's always going on. It's horrible, and it needs to change. And like, and you know, it's like at least our media is starting to represent things in a better way. You know, I think it's problematic when it's just too in your face, like kind of sloppily. But this show is doing a great job of kind of just weaving that into the fabric of the show as part of the sort of tapestry of of life that they're representing, which is a mirror of our lives, in which race and problems with race has always been part of the tapestry of this country. And so it just gives it that more like an authentic sort of feel. And also, you know, it really ultimately winds up being more important than just like, all right, well, now we're going to get a black Captain America, you know, like it's not about that. It's like, what does it mean for there to be a black Captain America? You know, like, what does that mean? You know, like, let's look at that from every fucking angle and let's consider every possibility, you know? And I think that's what they're doing. And ultimately it's going to get us to the point where I hope that we can accept that the next Captain America movie will be Sam Wilson as Captain America. And that will be like a legit fucking 2-hour big screen, like just a mega Marvel fest, you know? So really love that. Just the Josiah story was, or Isaiah. God damn it, is it Isaiah or Josiah? I think it's Isaiah. I don't know. I'm really tired. I'm really stoned. I'm gonna be honest about that. Anyway, I'm trying to figure out where I was. I kind of lost my train of thought. Okay, so, all right. So I want to go there. I mean, the Carly thing. There's the Carly thing, and then there's the Sharon Carter thing, because we had one scene with Sharon Carter. I didn't quite understand if they were implying that she was indeed this power broker or not. There's the whole power broker thing that still needs to be addressed, so I don't know what's going to happen there. Oh yes, that's what I was trying to think of earlier. That's what it kept slipping my mind, because it was a little bit jarring, and it was kind of having a little bit of trouble coming back into my mind. The Julia Louis-Dreyfus thing, like she's some sort of Contessa, and like she wanted to say that like the United States does not own the shield, and also she has access. Like she represents people that are very powerful that want him to continue being Captain America or something, or at least a super soldier type. I don't know. Like she wants him to call her. I don't know who she is. If maybe you guys know who she is, sound off in the comments below. I don't know who she is. She's probably from the comics. I don't read the Avengers comics, so I'm not an Avengers person, and therefore I do not know all the lore. If we're doing an X-Men show, I can go pretty deep on that shit, but if we're going Avengers, yeah, I'm kind of out of the loop with respect to like actual facts from the actual comics, unless it was part of a big crossover like Civil War or something like that. Yeah, I don't know what that's all about. There's a lot of things they're introducing. There's a lot of moving parts. Like, is it all going to converge, or are we going to have some like loose ends that are going to be tied together in other shows or movies? You know, either way, I'm fine with it, as long as we get a good sort of resolution to this show and like all the important arcs, which obviously involve Sam becoming Captain America, Bucky finally coming to terms with, you know, just being Bucky and being able to be himself once again, you know, the person that he stopped being the minute he fell off that train back in Captain America 1, you know, like, does he finally get to be that person again, you know, and maybe just be himself without the Winter Soldier and without sort of the stigma of that? Maybe, you know. We have the introduction of this John Walker. Is he going to become a villain? Is he going to die? Who knows? What's going to happen to these super soldiers that are with Carly? There's like 6 of them, right? There's the Global Repatriation Council. That's an interesting organization. Are we going to learn more about them? Like, is there going to be more significance, or are they going to be destroyed in the next episode, you know? I don't think we're going to see... I think we're done with the Dora Milaje and Zemo, right? It feels like we're done with the Dora Milaje and Zemo, but maybe not. Are we going to see Captain America? Because it was a subtle hint of the fact that he might be on the moon or whatever. And that's something that did happen in the comics. He became old at one point. I believe he was on a base on the moon. And there is something happening in space, as we saw at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, where we saw Nick Fury with the Skrulls on some space station. Is Steve up there too? We're gonna see. I don't know. A lot's gonna happen. I know we're gonna get some big action sequence, which will be very crazy. So you're gonna have him. You're gonna have Sam as Captain America. You're gonna have Bucky. You're gonna have John Walker, and then you're gonna have all the super soldiers, and they're doing something. They're going after the Global Repatriation Council, and so that's gonna be interesting. And then we might have, actually Bucky was, I was going to say maybe we'll have Bucky and Sam's sister get together, but Bucky did have that chick back home that he was on that date with. So we'll see what happens there. I don't know. I'm just really liking the show. I'm tired. It's late. It's like, what is it? It's like 1:33. These shows, I like that they're like an hour. I really like that. But really, I mean, it's late. And like, who has a lot of energy at this time? But then again, fucking Marvel, like brand new MCU content. I have to talk about it. I didn't talk about it last week because I couldn't get it to start for a while. And then when I did, then when I finally did, it was really late. And I was just so exhausted. I could barely fucking keep my eyes open. So couldn't do it. But I did it this week. And I'm really looking forward to next week. And I'm really happy that now next week will be the end of the second Disney Plus MCU film, which are like basically extended movies, like the Snyder Cut. And that's really cool, That's 2 more MCU movies since the pandemic started, We haven't had anything. We're going to get Black Widow, and that's going to be cool. And other stuff is coming. I'm very excited about all of it. And, let's see what happens. Anyway, it's always good to talk to you guys about stuff, and I hope everybody's doing well. And I hope everybody has a good week. And then I'll try to throw down a little bit of talky next week. Hope everybody is doing well. And as always, I want to remind you that if you haven't already, it's time to put a X in the box because ain't nobody checking me. Take care, folks.